all this flying, I probably haven't picked up in related view, what a thrill it was to learn how to fly, and it was an opportunity and a life that was just so far beyond anything I thought that would ever happen to me. And we were, I passed over a couple of things here I think I should bring out, and that is these airplanes were similar to what you've probably seen in pictures that are called the old biplane of Stearman. And these were not Stearmans by a long shot. These were old Franklins and Hamiltons and Wacos. And we had a Waco WHD. These were open cockpit biplanes. And they had a couple hundred horsepower, but they had a two-bladed prop, wooden prop. And to start these things, we didn't have any push buttons or self-starters. There was a procedure that you use, which you might get a kick out of. The procedure was the mechanic would stand there with his two hands on the tip of the propeller, and he would holler, "Gas on," and you'd repeat that. And you see, you'd lean over the cockpit and say, "Gas on," and then he'd say, "Switch off," and you'd repeat it, "Switch off," and you double check your switch. And then he'd pull down as hard as he could to spin the prop a couple of times. And the reason for this was that he wanted to get the oil up into the top cylinder of the 7-cylinder radial engines. So he would spin it once, and then he'd repeat it again, gas on, switch off, and I'd repeat it, gas on, switch off, and then he'd pull the prop through again a couple of times. And then about the third or fourth time, he'd holler gas on, and I'd holler gas on, and he'd holler switch on, and I'd holler switch on. And then he'd pull as hard as he could and step back quickly. And if you were good at it, you would catch that thing, the engine would kick over and the exhaust would fly out, and that sure did smell good. And it would bark a couple of times and cough and kick, and then you'd jazz the throttle a little bit and get it going, running smoothly. And there were some applicants, some of my buddies that were having a heck of a time with it, because this is a hard job for a mechanic. So it didn't take them long to figure out which one of us kids knew how to do it and which ones didn't, and they would work with it, have you adjust the throttle just right so they didn't have to stand out there and do this. This is showing you and indicating to you just how long ago this all took place. Let's see now. We had about 4 weeks to go in this program, and what was happening is that the Mankato State Teachers College got a call down from the NAS Minneapolis, Naval Air Station Minneapolis, to say that they wanted 6 of our applicants up there as soon as possible if they had completed their work. And our ground school and everything was proceeding and just on fine, and our grades. So they double-checked our academic scores and where we were standing, and I could qualify for that along with several of the other fellows. And then they went to Abe and the other pilots, the other instructors, and they said that pick out 10 or 12 of your people here that you think can pass a check flight. So I was lucky enough to be picked out as one of those to qualify for what we had at this elimination. Stage 2 check flight consisted of actually 2 check flights. One was made with your regular instructor, in my case Abe, and this consisted of getting into the airplane. On this check ride, we sat in the front and the instructor sat in the back, and it consisted of starting the engine properly, taxiing out properly, again with the instructor overriding the controls if you did anything wrong, and then for you to take it off, and he'd override the controls So you get up to 50, 60 miles an hour and lift it into the air, gently pulling back on the stick and easing back on the throttle once you got off the deck, and climb up to your area and go out to your instruction area, which is about 15, 20 minutes away. And then to start to go through your test of all your aerobatics that you had learned. So I went through all of the things that I described earlier, all the aerobatics, and returned to the field and swung in upwind and settled it in for a landing, easing back on the stick and a little bit more and a little bit more, and walking the rudder pedals, keeping it right in the middle of the runway, and he gave me a little bit of help and a little bit more back on the stick and landed it and came in, and he gave me an up check. He gave me a thumbs up. And so I was thrilled with that. And it was just the greatest feeling in the world. This is the first flying test that I had really passed that amounted to anything. And then it was time for lunch, and after lunch, the other instructor's name was Les, and another expert pilot. So I had to repeat what I had done with Abe, only that this instructor, when we got out to the area, he told me what to do. And so he had me climb up to 2,500 feet and level off, and I did that just like Abe had told me to do, and made some turns, and then we climbed a little bit higher up to about 4,000 or 5,000 feet. And then he put me through, and every time I would do a maneuver, he would wiggle the gosport, and I would turn around, and he'd give me a thumbs up on each one I had done. And I went through my spins left and right, and the loops, and the chandelles, and the let's see, what else were we doing? The snap rolls, and on the snap roll, he didn't like my snap roll to the right, so he asked me to repeat that. So I always liked to snap left rather than right. I don't know why, but he asked me to repeat it, so I repeated the snap roll, and I turned around, and he had his head down in the cockpit, and no word from him over the gosport, so I snapped it again. And I looked around, there's still no reaction from him, so I snapped it the third time. And looked around, and holy cow, so I really leveled the plane off and got everything set in my mind again, and gave that thing a real snap to the right again. And he said, okay, you passed the snap roll to the right real good. And what it was is that he had his belt had come loose, and he was trying to tighten it while I'm doing snap rolls. So that was kind of exciting, because I could have ended up flying that airplane alone there all of a sudden. But that's the way it was. There weren't too many regulations in this phase of the program. So like I say, after every maneuver, he'd give me an up check or have me repeat it. The only thing I really had to repeat was my right snap roll. And then we'd be turned down, and he helped again ease me back a little bit more in the stick than what I had, and we had a little crosswind, and he had me correct for that. Abe had, anyway, before I interrupt myself, so we continued on and taxied up, and we got out, and he said, "You did a very good job." He says, "That was real nice." He says, "I think you're going to be good material for the U.S. Navy." And so I was absolutely just thrilled. This is, 2 check rides in one day for a boot kid, and to pass them, I felt this was pretty great. So this meant that I could be accelerated with my academic scores, and with my passing these 2 check rides, I was one of the 6 that was able to return back up to Minneapolis, the Naval Air Station up there. And I reported in, and then they made out our official Navy ID card and took a picture there, a temporary picture, but they took a picture on this ID card. And now we're officially in the Navy program, but it was dated back to the first time that we went down to Winona. So it was actually predated the day that we had actually finished all our physical and academic tests up there at the Naval Air Station earlier. And now we are officially in, and to return to your home for 3 or 4 days, and then be prepared that we'll be going. The orders are being written up, and you're going to be assigned to Iowa City, and we were to go aboard the Iowa State University, the Seahawks, and let's see, that was going to be our official Navy V5 Naval Aviation Training Program. This is your pre-flight school. And so, okay, I went home and said goodbye to the folks, and we had a couple days off, and I had a chance to check around with the kids in the neighborhood and see what they were doing. And some of the fellows had already left, and went up to 50th and Bryant, was checking on how Franny Beathan was doing up in Canada, and some of the guys had heard from him, and he was coming along there pretty good. And then we found out that some of the guys, one of the guys that ran the drugstore, Manny Katz, he had his father ran the drugstore, and he worked there, and so he had developed all kinds of ailments, and he couldn't make it. It was kind of surprising to us, to those of us that were qualifying for various programs or going into, like Donnie was going in the Army, and he was working for his commission, and everybody was doing something and getting involved. And there was a couple of kids that wanted, were conscientious objectors, but Manny Katz and Lenny Neiman, and there's 3 or 4 of those little Jewish boys that this isn't anything other than the truth, but it just seemed that all of a sudden when the time came to go to the service, they had all kinds of ailments, everything from broken backs to sore toes to ingrown toenails, and they just found ways that they were their dads and could get them out of it. And it kind of shocked us, to think that somebody wouldn't want to snap in and get with it and go out and do the program and do your part. But anyway, the couple 3 days went by, and meanwhile my girlfriend, Edna Little, she was half Indian. She had drifted off with some other guy, and that was that. So there wasn't really much going on, and I got my orders that I had to get out. That I think it was the next day. So I reported out to the Naval Air Station. They put us, like they said goodbye to the folks, and they put us in the buses, and we tore off down to the railroad station. There was about 50 or 60 of us, and took the train down to Iowa City, and we're all gabbing on the way down, what a great time we're going to be having, and what it's going to be like, and what we're going to be looking forward to, and just generally excited and kind of scared inside, because we didn't know what was going to be happening next. We get to Iowa City, and we look out the window of the train, and there's half a dozen enlisted men, about 3 chiefs and 4 or 5 Navy officers, and we climbed down out of there, and they got clipboards with our names on them, and said, so we could see this chief barked out some orders, and wow, all of a sudden, this isn't like Winona, and this isn't Mankato, and these guys are serious. So they shouted out for us to line up, and had a couple of salty remarks to make about it. And I suppose we did look like a bunch of slobs standing there, because we had on just different little jackets and slacks, and then a little bag or a little suitcase with shaving stuff in it. So they made it short order, and they went down through the roster. We had a roll call. Everybody was there. Everybody's accounted for. They lined us up in 2, and he said to do the best you can walking in 2s over those buses without falling down. And okay, so here we are, and we got ourselves aboard the buses, and the buses took us over to the Iowa State campus, and then the Navy had taken over the entire campus. And we came up into the front area there, a great big U driveway, and we were going to be assigned over in the quadrangle. We looked over at the parade field, and my God, here comes a whole bunch of guys. They're all marching down there, and did they ever look sharp? And man, we were impressed. This looked like really something. And the Navy band was playing, and there was some type of a review going on, or what it was. We didn't know at that point what it was, but we were sure impressed with the way they all looked. So they lined us up again, and we went in and registered, had to verify our names against the roster for off the train, and then we were assigned rooms, and we didn't pick out roommates. They did that for us, and with that we lined up and headed for. It was about time for chow, so we went in there, and they said that there's nothing really important for you people to be talking about, so you will not talk during chow. Okay, that's the rules, and so we went in and got our chow, and the food was very, very good, excellent food. And we spent about 15-20 minutes on lunch, and then the chief ordered us out of there and line up again, and so then we walked in twos again over to the issue, this area that they had, and so we went in there and gave our head sizes and hat sizes and waists, and they issued us the shoe size, and so they issued all our clothes out, and our clothes consisted of swimming shorts, track shorts, and navy colors are blue and gold. So if you had a blue top, you had a gold shorts, and then if you had blue shorts, you had a gold top. And we got 2 or 3 of each of those, and then we got a warm-up suit and dungarees. And I can't remember all the things we issued us. And then they tried on our shoes, and we got issued track shoes and tennis shoes. So we had a pretty good idea from the clothes we were getting issued that we were going to be kind of busy guys. And we had these all, and then we got stenciled up there, and I had this boot enlisted man that didn't know how to work the stencil machine very good. He got the J and he got the W, and he got HALLQUI. So when we lined up again, the chief is calling off the roster, and he comes to JW Hollique, and I'm doing, Jesus, that isn't my name. So I didn't answer. He comes over and stands right in front of me. He says, I'm going back there once more and holler your name. And if you're so damn dumb you don't know your name, you don't belong in this program. So when he came to J.W. Hollique, I hollered out, yes, sir. And I got that changed a couple days later. So after that, we marched off to our rooms, and we were taught how to put our clothes in order in each one of the dresser drawers. And we each had 2 dresser drawers, and the room was more like a large closet, but we each had a desk, we each had a lamp. There was a bunk bed on one side and a single bed on the other side. We each were assigned a sack, and that was it. We were taught how to make our bed. You bounce a coin off of it. If the coin doesn't bounce, it isn't made tight enough. And the hankies go over in this corner, and all the folded edges are on one side. There's no loose edges. All the folded edges this way. Your pillow is put here. It's not a 1/4 of an inch over. It's not a 1/4 of an inch to the other side. It's not a 1/4 of an inch too high. It's exactly right where we want it. And there's a wrong way and a Navy way of doing things. We learned that real fast. We lined up again, and we do a lot of running down there. Every time that we lined up, instead of walking, you'd run. We started this running over back to the issue room again, and this took a little more time. They shaved our heads, and then they started issuing our uniforms, and we got khaki shirt and pants, got 2 or 3 pairs of those, and your belts, and your shoes, and socks white and socks black, or socks navy blue and black, and then we got our white uniform, which had that turtleneck top to it, that snap top to it up there that you didn't wear a tie with, and then your cadet officer cap with the khaki blue and white top, and we were instructed how to exchange the tops and how to put them on properly, and then issued our white shirts and navy blue ties and navy blue jackets with the little anchor buttons on them, and the slacks that went with it. And we had to put our orders in for that, because this had to be kind of custom made, more or less so that it would fit good. And this is where we started getting this feeling that this place is, the Navy pre-flight program This is a 13-week course. It would correspond to an enlisted man's going to boot camp. Or it would also be like going to the Point or Annapolis. Because all through this vein, you could tell that there wasn't any profanity. It made very clear to us that if a man has to use profanity, he does not have command of the English language, and he would never be a gentleman. The point that was coming across already was that, if you have it, and if you've got it in you, you can take it, you can end up being, commissioned in the United States Navy and being recognized as a gentleman. This was the core of what they were trying to teach us. So we went back in again to the issue room and got all of our books, all our textbooks, and there was a textbook for every course we took, of course, and we did everything from Navy history, Navy lore, aeronautics, aerodynamics, mechanical engineering, engine manuals on the particular engines that the U.S. Navy had, the Air Arm had at that time. And we got our slide rules, our plotting boards. All of that was issued along with our T-squares and triangles and the various instruments that we needed, and a case to carry them in, and they were told exactly how to stow this into our bags, and then we received a large folder that explained all the rules and regulations of the pre-flight school. What was expected of us in there was a demerit system. What would happen to you if you had so many demerits, how these demerits were incurred, and then we went back to our rooms and got everything stowed properly, and were ordered again out to the quadrangle, stand at attention, and we returned. Starting then, we were introduced to our Ensign Benson, who was from Boston, and he was a pretty strict disciplinarian, a young fellow, but he was a real good Navy officer. So he was our platoon leader, and the way this worked is that you had a Navy officer as your platoon leader, but as you were progressing through the school, because of your grades in ground school and your grades out on the field, and at the V5 program, the program was lined up. It would alternate every week, but you'd have ground school in the morning, and then you'd have your sport activities in the afternoon, and then the following week it'd be reversed. So you'd be graded on everything you did. Everything you did down there, you did on the run. We ran to everything, and our organizational formation was set up that would have 12 cadets to a squad, 4 squads to a platoon, 4 platoons to a company, and I believe there were six companies to a battalion. So it was much like going to either boot camp and a mixture of going to the Annapolis, where we were considered just plebes there, and we were just like white trash our first couple, 3-4 weeks, and then you got to be like a freshman, then a junior, and then a senior. We had those 3 classifications, so that you'd move up to become the upperclassman. That would be equivalent to your senior, and we were taught all the do's and don'ts around the quadrangle, what was expected of us and where we were to be. So we got into our uniforms. This was just our sweatsuits. That's the only thing that we had available, and we were to run over to the auditorium where the admiral, who was the commander, he was an admiral. He was the commanding officer of the V5 training program there. and he had a chief of staff who was a four-striper, a Navy captain. And those two dudes had been in World War I, and then those two officers had a staff of about 30 or 40 officers, from commanders down to ensigns, which comprised all our instructors, both in ground school and in our sports activities. So we went over there, and the admiral, we were told that there would be no talking whatsoever of any kind. Nothing that we had to say was of any importance, and we got that picture pretty straight. So we went in and marched in and quietly and sat down, and all four platoons came in, so there was 192 of us in there. And the admiral comes out, and boy, was I impressed. This is the first time this little kid from the Midwest had ever seen the United States Navy admiral. And the talk had been around the quadrangle that the admiral had been in World War I, and he was a commander of a destroyer squadron and had made quite a name for himself. So he started out, and he made it vividly clear this guy was real sharp, about medium height, silver hair, and he had a full goatee. And this is the first time that he had been actually resurrected and brought back after, because he'd been retired, and so they brought him in because they needed to have enough officers with this accelerated programs that all the Navy and the Army and everybody had going. So this guy was sharp as a tack, and you could hear that he was a complete disciplinarian from the word go, and that Navy regs were never to be contested. And he went on to give us some background of the Navy history, and the courage and the thrill of being in the U.S. Navy, and that as he looked out over the crowd, he was going to be disappointed that so few of you are going to be able to graduate. And it's our position here, our responsibility, to find out what's wrong with you, to find out why you're not qualified to continue on to become a U.S. naval officer. And so we're kind of looking at each other a little bit, and figured this is going to be a real warm welcome. And he tried to lighten it up a little bit near the end of his speech by mentioning that this had been the first time that he had been so far inland and so far away from water, and that he was calling our attention to the fact that they parked their cars so funny. They didn't do any parallel parking in Iowa City. Everybody parked, with the nose of the car into the curb. So he went on to say this is the first time in his life that he'd ever seen, cars parked with their sterns sticking out into the road. And of course we chuckled a little bit at that, and that's about all the levity we got out of it. And he was wrapping it up, and he paused for a little bit, and the cadet stood up and said, May I ask a question, sir? And the admiral looked down at him, just daggers, and he said, you don't address an admiral, cadet. An admiral addresses you. Haven't you learned anything? Chief, take this cadet out. And wow. And so the cadet marched over to the chief, and the chief took him out the door, and the admiral proceeded to tell us what was going on. He said that that former cadet is headed to the brig, where he will undress and take off his sweat clothes, and he will get into a Navy jumper and slacks, whatever they call those bell-bottom pants, and he'll be on a train tonight and arriving at the Great Lakes Naval Training Station tomorrow morning, and he's a second-class seaman unassigned, and that's the end of him. And If the place was quiet before, it was 100 times quieter after that, and there was a lot of perspiration moving around in that